Midnight Escape to the Sky. Chapter 1. Two Ordinary Families Under the Iron Curtain. In the early months of 1978, in the Thuringia region of East Germany, DDR, lived two families who, from the outside, appeared completely ordinary. The Strelzik and Wetzel families. Peter Strelzik was an electrician, while his close friend Gunter Wetzel was a bricklayer and driver. These two men shared a deep concern. They did not want their children to grow up in this gray regime where every step was monitored by the Stasi and freedoms were severely restricted. They wanted to escape to West Germany, but the Berlin Wall and the border zones, filled with minefields, automated tripwire guns, and watchtowers, were a total death trap. Crossing by land was impossible, and underground tunnels were already under strict surveillance. One evening, Peter and Gunter watched a documentary on West German television about hot air balloons. Right then, a wild idea sparked in their minds. If we cannot cross by land, we will fly right over the border. Chapter 2. The Secret Textile Operation. The idea was brilliant, but they had no balloon, let alone the materials to make one. Furthermore, buying large quantities of fabric in East Germany was an immediate red flag for espionage or intent to escape. The Stasi would show up at your door in no time. The two friends got their wives on board and set to work. They needed roughly 800 square meters of fabric to create the balloon's massive envelope. To avoid drawing suspicion, they traveled to different cities like Leipzig, Gera, and Erfurt, visiting shops one by one. They bought a little at a time from each store, sometimes umbrella material, sometimes lining fabric, sometimes bed sheets. They lied to the shop assistants, claiming, "We are sewing a tent for a camping club." In the attic of their house, Gunter Wetzel sat at an old sewing machine. For weeks, during the night, he lined the floor beneath the machine with blankets so the Stasi agents wouldn't hear the noise, sewing hundreds of meters of fabric together. Meanwhile, Peter welded the balloon's gondola from iron pipes and crafted a handmade gas burner out of a motorized ceiling fan. Chapter 3. The First Attempt and General Disaster. In July 1979, the wind finally began blowing from the north to the south, straight toward West Germany. On a wet and foggy night, the Strelzik family, the Wetzel family, had backed out of this attempt, believing the balloon was too small. Secretly carried the balloon to a clearing in the forest. They inflated the balloon and rose into the sky. Everything was going well as they drifted through the clouds toward the border. However, just as they crossed the border line, the moisture from the clouds seeped into the fabric, making the balloon heavy. With the gas in the burner running out, the balloon rapidly lost altitude and crashed into a forest on the East German side, just a few hundred meters short of the border fences. By some miracle, no one in the family was injured. But dawn was breaking. Leaving the balloon, the gondola, and all their materials behind in the woods, they rushed back to their home. In the morning, the Stasi found the balloon in the forest. A massive manhunt began across East Germany. Wanted posters were printed, and tailor shops were raided. Report the traders who bought these fabrics. Chapter 4. A Race Against Time. The noose was tightening around the Strelzik and Wetzel families. It was only a matter of time before the Stasi raided their homes. Instead of surrendering or facing prison, they decided to take an even greater risk. They would build a new, larger, and more powerful balloon. This time, they had no time to lose. They gathered hundreds of meters of taffeta fabric in various colors, blue, red, green, from different cities. Terrified that the police would knock on the door at any moment, Gunter sewed for up to 15 hours a day. Peter scaled up the burner system to achieve a much stronger flame. The resulting new balloon looked like a colorful patchwork quilt, but it was twice the size of the first one. On the night of September 15, 1979, just as the Stasi was closing in on their trail, the weather report forecasted the long-awaited southbound wind. This was their very last chance. Chapter 5. The Patchwork Quilt Flying to Freedom. At 2 a.m., a total of 8 people from the two families, 4 adults and 4 children, gathered in the woodland clearing. The massive balloon, made of patchwork fabrics, began to inflate under the roaring flames of the handmade burner. Everyone climbed into the gondola. They cut the ropes. The balloon rose rapidly. It ascended so powerfully that within minutes they were 2,400 meters above the ground. The air was freezing cold. Just as they hovered directly over the border line, the massive searchlights of the East German border guards began scanning the sky. One of the searchlights hit the balloon. Alarm bells rang at the border, but the balloon was so high that even though the soldiers fired upward, the bullets couldn't reach it. Up in the air, however, another drama was unfolding. The gas pipe leading to the burner had clogged due to the freezing cold, and the flames were dying down. The balloon began to descend gradually. After 28 minutes of pure tension in the air, they made a rough landing in a meadow in pitch darkness. Conclusion: where are we? When they climbed out of the basket, everything was silent. There were no soldiers, no sirens. Peter and Gunter began walking into the dark to figure out where they were. A few hundred meters away, they spotted an agricultural machine. When they shined their flashlight on the machine's label, they burst into tears. The machine was made in West Germany. A few minutes later, a West German police patrol approached them. Terrified, they asked, "Where are we?" The police officer smiled and replied, "You are in Bavaria. You are in West Germany. You are safe." By taking to the sky in a handmade hot air balloon, these two families had bypassed the Iron Curtain to pull off one of the most extraordinary escapes in history. Their ingenuity and courage went down in history as one of the greatest symbols of the struggle for freedom worldwide.